When I was growing up, Martin Luther King said that we should try not to see the race, but instead the person for who they are. The country never perfected that approach, but it was, and in my opinion, still is a noble goal. But over the years, the message has evolved into something notably different.
Pablo, Pablo, Pablo el molinero.
An idea known as critical race theory became very popular and, according to some, became the genesis for what is commonly referred to as woke ideology. CRT, as it was called, posited that as willing beneficiaries of historical inequities, white people were all racist and there was nothing we could do about it. This is a gross oversimplification of the whole CRT idea, but it is a common interpretation among critics as well as some of its supporters. Books by proponents of CRT such as Raman D'Angelo and Ibram X. Kendi became recommended reading in corporate, educational, and even military circles. Woke ideology expanded to include other affected groups, such as the LGBT, etc. community. Climate change and even COVID-19 politics got included in the mix. All of this led to a phenomenon known as cancel culture, and that was when the woke movement became truly fascist. My definition of fascism is basically that it encompasses an ideology that doesn't allow or provide for dissenting viewpoints. In other words, it's an intellectual dictatorship. Fascism is the element that cancel culture contributed to woke ideology. It became very risky to deviate in any way from certain viewpoints, lest one be ostracized from the workplace, political arena, or especially from academia. This even led to opinions by legitimate experts in fields such as medicine and climatology being widely censored on social media platforms for ideas that didn't conform to the woke consensus. Think I'm exaggerating? Martin O'Malley, former governor of Maryland, ran for president in 2016. During his campaign, he was asked if Black Lives Matter. He answered that all lives matter. Well, that was the wrong answer. While that wasn't the O'Malley campaign's only problem, his incorrect answer certainly contributed to his elimination from consideration for the Democratic nomination. I have talked to you about the issue of cancel culture in other videos, which I invite you to watch. So, back to the topic at hand, which were the charges against the Southern Poverty Law Center. The SPLC, as it is known, became part of what some critical observers have referred to as the race grievance industry. In other words, those are groups who are accused of exacerbating racial tensions for financial or political gain. In the specific case of the SPLC, the legal charges against them include hiding contributions through undeclared shell companies to members of racist organizations such as the Ku Klux Klan, the Aryan Nation, and neo-Nazi groups like the National Alliance and the National Socialist Party of America. The government further alleges that fundraising on the premise of fighting those racist groups while secretly funding them constitutes fraud of those from whom they solicit donations. To put it in simpler terms, contributors to the SPLC were never told that they were, in fact, indirectly contributing to those hate groups. Remember the 2017 Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville? That led to the very fine people comment by President Trump that caused so much outrage, even though the out-of-context meaning of the quote was thoroughly debunked. Anyway, it is alleged that one of the unidentified organizers of the Unite the Right rally had been paid some $270,000 by the SPLC. The indictment also lists payments to members of the Ku Klux Klan, and that one informant affiliated with the neo-Nazi National Alliance was paid more than $1 million. Very fine people indeed. Was the SPLC trying to exaggerate the scope of racism in the United States to create fear and outrage in order to raise more money? Well, that's not for me to say. That's what the trial is about. But in 2016, the group had an endowment of around $51 million. In the year following the Charlottesville March, donations tripled and their net worth jumped to over $133 million. Now the group has over $800 million in assets. There are other groups in the so-called grievance industry that are under investigation. For example, The Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation is being looked at now for how it manages tens of millions of dollars in funds. I'm not going into the details of that controversy except to say that the former executive director for that group, a woman named Patrice Cullors, claimed that financial disclosure requirements for Black-led nonprofit organizations were structurally racist. I'm no expert on the subject, but as far as I know, the rules for seeking tax-exempt status for the BLMGNF were exactly the same as they are for any other nonprofit organization, and that brings me to one of my larger points, which I shall address in my next video.